And today we will be discussing the relationship between risk management and business continuity. Obviously, because they look like they're two different concepts that are very far apart, whereas they're very near each other. And in fact, you can't look at one without looking at the other. We're going to discuss the principles of risk management, and basically this is to equip you with the understanding, with the background of understandings of the things that you need to take account of when you are planning a risk management implementation, risk management process, and business continuity. The normative reference that we will be interacting with in the course of these discussions will be impact. You need to understand what impact means. And impact means damage or that would occur when a threat materializes. The likelihood is obviously the chance that something will occur. Risk also now means, in the context of impact and likelihood, is where the impact meets the likelihood, and therefore we can have what we call the raw risk. We obviously have to factor in the vulnerabilities and controls in place. Risk management is therefore cumulatively now the coordinated activities of identifying the risk, assessing and analyzing the risk, and evaluating it. You know, risk is not complete if it has not been solved, or strategies has not been put in place to ensure that the risk has been addressed. So the whole risk management focuses on those key concepts. Business continuity at the end is basically referring to the resilience or the capability of a business to have resilience to withstand any disruptions, be it temporary or permanent, and ensuring that in whatever business line that you are still able to meet the expectations of your clientele. And that is in regards to delivery of goods and services. So you might want to think, for example, if you are a supermarket, you obviously need to find a way to get goods in stock so that your customers can be able to come and shop. Therefore, business continuity is basically a strategy that will ensure that you just have exactly that at the end of the day, stock on the shelves. So how is business continuity and risk management related? This is, as I said, is an interconnectedness. And you first of all have to identify and assess the risk to be able to thereafter focus on business continuity to address the risks that you had initially pointed out at the beginning. The effective business continuity obviously comes as a result of managing the risk. And on the other side of the story, you cannot effectively be able to manage a risk if you do not have a continuity plan or a strategy to address the risk. That is how it is linked in some sort of like back and forth relationship. And to give in some small example is that today we have the issue of a lot of people working from home. And one of the risks is that people are not going to be able to come to work for this or that reason, maybe sickness, transport, or whatever. And that is a risk, but your business has to nonetheless continue. So how are you going to ensure that you have business continuity? So first of all, you have to be aware that the staff is not going to come. Then what? Then business continuity comes into place. You put in strategies such as Zoom meetings, online meetings, shifting, you roster the employees in a way that they attend work in various shifts. And that's the relationship between business continuity and risk management. So here we are. What are the principles of risk management? You sort of like have to understand in the background that effective risk management will require you to make considerations of some certain things. And one of those things that you need to think about in the context of an organization is the integration part of it. I'm going to point it to the integration. And integration means that the risk culture or the risk strategy must be integrated with the organizational activities. There's some tendencies of people to download generic risk management formulas that work for other companies, but expect them to work in their own organizations. And that's just not it. You have to integrate it with the operations. You have to integrate it with your service lines. You have to integrate it with what you do. The next thing you need to do is that they need to structured and comprehensive here. And what we are focusing on is there should be a structured and comprehensive approach to risk management, and this should obviously. So I'm trying to say that there should be a structured and comprehensive approach to risk management to contribute to a consistent and comparable results. So many organizations have many departments, and yet you might. It is common thinking, and it is quite a fallacy in my view, to think that risk management is a security function, whereas it is a function for all business lines. Every business line will have its own unique risks that it faces, and therefore the risk management has to be comprehensive. It has to cover all departments. Name it. If you say, for example, a department like finance, the risks that are faced by finance will be things like liquidity, cash flow, tax compliance. If you think about other departments, for example, if you have a department like supply chain, you obviously have the risks. You'll run the risk of not being able to get your supplies from the source, either because of a broken down supply chain system. And of late we have had the issues of control of the flights in and out of the country. So it has to be structured. It has to be everywhere. Then it has to be, that point has to be customized. The framework has to be customized and proportionate to fit your internal and external business context. And this is, of course, you have to have a key focus to your objectives and the vision and mission of the organization. So you have to sort of like align your risk management strategy to your organization. Then it has to be inclusive. You have to ensure that all the stakeholders have been involved. And stakeholders here I refer to any person, external or internal of the business, who might be affected by by the decisions of your organization. So you have to ensure everyone has been included, everyone has feedback, to ensure that you have a robust risk management strategy. It has to be dynamic. It has to accommodate rapid changes of society. The society of today, 3 months ago, we didn't have COVID, but now it's a different game change altogether. So it has to be able to be awake to the realities of the day. And so there's no one risk management strategy that fits all situations. So you have to be aware. Then it has to be punctuated by the best available information. Today, there's a lot of information about COVID, about the impact of COVID on employees, the impact of COVID on HR, the impact of COVID on liquidity and finance. So you sort of like have to put in some effort to ensure that you have the best available information to rely to ensure that your risk management strategy is as up to date as possible. Then you have the human and cultural factors. Human behavior, you have to also take into consideration of human behavior, because at the heart of the implementation of the risk management strategy is that humans are the ones who actually implement this, and therefore you have to take care of cultural issues. Finally, is continuous improvement. There is no such thing as having one plan that can be able to to stand the test of time across 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. So there needs to be continuous improvement. And here I'm saying that there needs to be some small activities that ensure that there is improvement. You have to focus on risk audits. You have to also focus on a few activities like weekly, monthly meetings to review the risk levels, whether the risk that you once identified as high has been brought down to low, and so on and so forth. Moving forward, this naturally therefore takes us forward to what the framework is. The framework that you can see here that I have used on my presentation is found in ISO 31000. That is risk management guidelines. It's available on KINYANJUI's on ISO website. So it's really generic, but is to just be able to build you with capacity over the framework. And the purpose of the risk management is to obviously assist the organization to identifying the high risk to the organizations and integrating this culture to impact its operation. So today, one of the biggest risks many organizations are facing is the way that they do their business. And you know, it's strange because obviously the COVID is a game changer insofar as employee and client relationship or interaction with the organization is concerned. Yet many organizations have not been able to rethink properly their operations or the way they deliver their service to fit the client, because at the end of the day, all these strategies are to ensure that you are able to meet your client's expectations. And you know, it doesn't apply to private companies, it applies to government as well, because who is the client? The client is anyone who benefits from your service provision. So, quite recently, you may have seen NTSA seized the issue of inspections of motor vehicles. And that has obviously disallowed many people from being able to run their business. People who have vehicles and want to put them in Uber can now not do that because the inspection is not there. So continuity to the client. The client here is the citizen. So when we talk about the framework, I just want to highlight the key topics here and what I mean. And when I look at leadership and commitments at the heart of the risk management framework, and what I'm trying to say is that the risk management framework has to have the support of the highest leadership authorities in any organization. So the top management will be the oversight body, where in cases where that's applicable, and should ensure that risk management has been integrated into all organizational activities and functions. And they can demonstrate leadership by ensuring that there is a policy statement that will obviously establish the risk management approach, or just, the way of action from where we are today to where they're going to be in the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, or whatever that will be. They have to assign authority and responsibility and accountability. Who's going to lead it, who's going to be the champion, because remember, the risk management framework should be incorporated as an organizational habit or culture. Then at the framework, it has to be integrated. Integrating risk management will rely on an understanding of organizational structures and context. So you sort of like, first of all, need to understand the organizational structure and context to be able to know how best to integrate your risk formula to fit your organizational requirements, to meet your organizational requirements. So integrating risk management into an organization is a dynamic process and should be customized to the organizational needs and culture. So, by way of example, I would say the business, the nature of business of telecommunications company, like Safaricom, is quite different to the nature of business to another service company like Kenya Power. And obviously, you have to ensure that your risk framework fits the context. Then the design, you also have to understand a few things about the socio, cultural, and maybe regulatory, financial, just the environment upon which the organization exists, to be able to have a relatable risk management framework. Then implementation. So when it comes to implementation, the organization should lead the risk culture, and it should do so by a few ways. It can perhaps develop an appropriate plan, including time and resources, on when the all the exercise as concerned risk management start and when they end. They can identify where and who, how, or the decisions that needs to be made to ensure the risk management is a success. And they need to continuously to look and ask themselves, is this working for us? Is this giving us our up-to-date risk profile? Have I changed anything? Our up-to-date risk profile. Yeah. Finally, evaluation. So risk management has to have a continuous evaluation. So need to be able to periodically measure the risk and the risk management framework to ensure that its purpose is being realized, and the implementation plans are on course as they should be. And you also sort of like need to monitor the behavior, because we said that risk management is to identify a risk and put in strategies to address the risk in a way that we reduce the risk. So you sort of like have to evaluate and see whether you're being successful in doing that or not. And finally, adaptation and improvement is a key requirement. Remember, the cake is always going to be in the oven, so you need to continuously look out for ways that you can improve your risk management framework. So also this if you Google the risk management process, this is quite an available framework. But at the heart of it, you can see we have scope and context here. The scope, you sort of like before you begin, you have to understand and you have to limit yourself so that you can, avoid running the risk into having too much a broad perspective that doesn't even cover the specific areas of your interest. So the scope is very necessary to do, to figure out or to articulate, and you can start with something like the scope of the risk management. You can set the scope and say it's for the internal environment or for the operational environment or for whatever. Then the purpose. Obviously, the purpose has a relationship with the end user or the end client who benefits from this risk management process. So the purpose, in my view, would be to inspire greater confidence. First of all, if you think about the senior leadership of the company to the board of directors, and to ensure that there is continuity to the client, so that the client at no point does not get satisfaction because of a disruption that you could have taken care of. And mission, you can figure it in the mission, in the context, and the criteria. So risk assessment now here is where we are going to today some small focus on. But at the heart of the risk assessment is the risk identification, where you identify a risk. For example, today, a risk for many businesses is, let's say, because of employee. And the risks are many. Remember, we have supply chain risks, we have compliance with the legal environment, that's taxation. Many businesses are experiencing losses, but you have to identify the risk. Then once you identify the risk, then you go a step further and now discuss and now start analyzing the risk. And when you analyze the risk, you're looking at a few things to do with the likelihood, the impact, and then the evaluation. You've got to figure out the priority, because it may turn out that you have 10 risks, but their priority is not the same. And if the priority is the same, you gotta have a way to figure out which one comes first, because you can't cure all the risk at the same time, because it's gonna be very expensive for the organization. Then finally, risk treatment, and the whole of it encompasses risk management. You have to continuously monitor and review the progress of your risk management exercise. You can do this periodically. It can be weekly. You can, in your own small way, and in your departments, you can organize to have a 30-minute session every week to discuss about the risks and how they're impacting your business, and how you can possibly make a few changes into your operations to ensure and guarantee business continuity. Communication and consultation, you sort of like have to ensure that all departments in your organizations are talking to each other, and therefore there's no single person or department that is isolated. Finally, a very important thing is recording and reporting. Remember, many organizations should have, but don't have, a risk register. And this basically outlines all the risks that they have identified across all departments against their impact and priority to the business, and in a way of continuously trying to work around that risk to reduce it in a way that it doesn't expose the organization to harm or loss. So obviously the first process you're going to do, as I said earlier, is to identify the risk. And in the risk identification, you've got to sort of like identify the assets that you need to protect. And in this case, this is rather a generic example. I'm going to focus on operational continuity or business continuity. And once you understand what you need to focus on, then you can now go ahead onto the next step of risk analysis. And risk analysis, now this is where it involves the process of determining the likelihood and impact of a threat. And basically, I think I have a chart here. Good. So this is the chart. So usually, when we start, we will start with, maybe we have identified risk X, and we have given it a likelihood value of 1. So likelihood, there are many available resources online about how to plot the likelihood, and this is really a numerical value from 1 to 5. 1 meaning that the likelihood is very remote; it's almost not going to happen. But 5 meaning that the likelihood is almost imminent. It's for sure it's going to happen. So that's the scale of 1 to 5. And impact, altogether, impact also means the same thing. That 1, impact is possibly negligible, if any, to the organization, and 5, impact is causes potential for perhaps death, or such a big and drastic outcome that the organization cannot be able to withstand. Then once you do this, you plot in the low risk value. So just back to this screen again, I wanted to tell you the process of risk analysis, therefore, is you have to look at the likelihood on one side, and you have to marry that with the impact. Then you can be able to say that you have a certain risk level, high or low or medium. And so I particularly like to use this table. It's just a personal choice, but there are plenty of materials there that you can use to decide. So I like to use this one because this works for me very well, and it has been lifted from a security risk analysis from UK. Yeah. And so, for example, here we are looking at the likelihood of risk Y being 1. And are you all seeing my mouse? Yeah. So the likelihood of risk X is 1, and obviously that's around the zone of negligible. But the impact is 2. So you can see impact and likelihood, and therefore this means for the organization that the raw risk. So I'm on that table, I'm on the first left table for likelihood and impact. So and I've said this for risk Y, the likelihood is 1. You have assessed it. You have said, yeah, for example, let's have a working example. We can say like a kidnapping event. And this kidnap is not for a CEO, it's not for a high risk person, it's maybe for one of the people that you in your organization, maybe because of a business feud or things like that. So the likelihood could be 1, could be negligible, because maybe there has never been a history of that before. And there are various techniques that you can use to determine where the likelihood is. And you can go anywhere from 1 to 5, depending on the veracity of the situation. Then you're going to look at the impact. So if we do a likelihood of 1 and an impact of 2, it means this is a low risk. If there is a likelihood of 4 and an impact of 1, then it also means it's negligible. For example, if staff are going to steal stationery from the workplace, yes, of course, you can't search them when they're leaving, isn't it? But what's the impact? The impact is low. But conversely, if you on risk Z, you will see that the likelihood is 3. 3 is somewhere there, and impact is 5. Then that is obviously a high risk for the organization. Now, the second table there is to sort of like help you be able to prioritize, because as I said earlier, you can't be able to address all the risks at the same time, and you have to give them some sort of priority so that you can focus more resources to those that are high priority, because you know that they have potential of causing more impact and harm to your business. And for example, so we could use the risk Z and say that 3 plus 5 is high risk. So would come on the intermediate risk value and say that for sure it is high, but you have to consider the controls that you have been put in place. So if you've put in very strong controls, then that means that's a medium priority. It's not a high priority. But if you have put in if there are inadequate controls to control the risk, then it becomes the highest priority for the organization. And basically that's why it is. So I don't want to dwell here so much because the seat time is running. But I sort of like think you get the flow. If you don't, we can always have an offside discussion. I don't know whether we are comfortably here. I talk about treatment.
Yes, please.
So there are various ways that an organization can look at risks and decide how to deal with risks. But most of the common thing that people, that organization and even people do is transfer risk, and this is for sure the simplest way. And it means to insure. If you can't protect it, insure it, and it's the most cost-effective application of security. So if you are going to have a go down and you have the risk of fire, you obviously know that you can't eliminate the risk of fire. So the best way to do that is to transfer that risk to insurance. Elimination means that you completely have to do away with that activity. This is not a feasible option for many organizations, but depending on what, to ensure that you don't have to deal with that risk anymore. So For example, if in the obviously example of a kidnap here, to say if kidnap is a risk, let's say kidnap in a place like Somalia, then the only sure way to eliminate that risk is to stop operations in Somalia. So that's why I'm saying that it is not feasible for many organizations to consider this elimination problem option. There's acceptance. Some risks, as I said, are so small that you can accept, because the impact is not very high. Yes, the likelihood is there, but the impact is not very high. Like I said, employees will always put in stationery in their pockets, but you can decide to live with that risk. Finally, is reduction. The most common way of an approach to deal with risk is to reduce it, because when you look at these options here above, what it tells you is that you cannot remove a risk, and the only thing that you can reasonably do is to reduce the risk to reasonably as low as reasonably possible levels. And the common approach is this. There may be 2 or 3 common approaches, but those adverse risks which are intolerable, whatever benefits they may bring, and risk reduction measures are essential, whatever their cost. Another way to look at it is that those risks whose cost and benefits are taken into account. So you do a cost and benefit analysis, and you balance with the opportunities and potential consequences. Then you realize it's a lot. You can decide to just reduce it to as low as reasonably possible levels. So a real-time example is if you're in an organization and you arrange the risk of people stealing things like laptops, then obviously when you put in cameras, you reduce that because someone is going to be watched as they leave out. If you put a guard at the gate, obviously there's a search point. That also is a measure that is going to reduce that risk, but doesn't eliminate it. People can put it on their back and tie it with a bladder and they'll still walk out, but you have reduced it. Insofar as risk treatment is concerned, many organizations go wrong because they fail to identify and prioritize the risk treatment goals. And this means that you have to say that our organization is at point X and we need to move it all the way to point Y. And therefore, there are some certain activities in between here that needs to be done to ensure that the risk has been reduced. This will obviously lead to now what I call the lead measures. And if you're going to have a high impact thing, you have to have some small things that at the end of the day influence the high impact action that you want to take. So I call it lead measures. For example, if you want to bring staff into capacity, you may think that's the end goal. But how do you bring staff into capacity? You have to schedule regular trainings, regular capacity buildings, things like those. All these cumulatively are called the lead measures. Are called the lead measures to ensure that you achieve your risk objective or your risk goal. So finally, here on business continuity, I would say that I have oriented this in particular focus to COVID-19. And some of the primary risks as a result of the pandemic will affect your employees, will affect your supply chain, will affect your insurance, will affect your finances. It will also affect your contracts, and you may be forced to invoke force majeure because you can be able to honor your contractual obligations because of this or that risk, and that requires close monitoring. Some businesses have waited until the effect of the pandemic has fully developed, until they are running around trying to figure out how to solve that, and by this time operations are already suffering. So there is a need to have preparatory measures in place to deal with different types of emerging risks, mechanisms to track the risk, and to also have the necessary flexibility to revise and redesign the protocols in a way that they guarantee business continuity. So I'm going to lay a little bit focus on devising a protocol. This is basically a few actionable things that you can immediately pick up out of this presentation and act on. And I'm saying that a well-devised may often be a requirement of insurers, suppliers, and customers. Obviously, because I've seen many organizations ask, what's your risk, what's your business continuity plan, what's your risk management plan amongst the COVID, and insurers and business partners are going to be increasingly asking this from you to be able to determine on their end whether you can be a reliable source of service provision, or they have to consider other options because obviously you haven't figured out a way to keep your business in continuity. So you're gonna think about loss of capacity because of key employees and resources. I mean, let's face it, this disease is not going away in a month, in 2 months, in a year. My best bet is going to be here in at least 1.5 years. Obviously, World Health Organization thinks it's going to be here much longer. And therefore, you have to factor in your employees in your plans. How do you factor in for your, how do you articulate your employee issues such as medication, such as leave days, such as missing out of work, such as sick leaves? How do you guarantee business continuity amidst all these uncertainties? Continuing lines of communication and emergency systems are in process. So you need to think about your business. How do you ensure that everyone in your organization is talking to each other? A few examples I have seen is that many organizations have migrated to online video platforms such as this one to conduct their meetings, and whenever they need to meet, that's what they do. And if there are any activities that needs to be done as a team, there are other platforms like this Microsoft Teams that assist them to do it as a team. Then you have to think about procedures and processes to access IT systems and infrastructure. Most organizations have their own softwares that manage their payroll, that manage their suppliers, that manage their clients, and most of them are accessible on-site. Now we are looking at a situation where you have to think, what if my on-site has been rendered impossible, or I cannot access my workplace? Can I replicate the capabilities of my workplace to secondary and tertiary sites? If, for example, now it's a very interesting time because we're having these issues of contact tracing. You can imagine if 4 of your colleagues in your organizations are found to have COVID, you can assure a good number of your colleagues will also be contact traced. And what does this do to your business? Have you thought about that? Have you planned about that? And what's your continuity plan in such a situation? Then you also have to have a continual continuation of internal reporting and supervision in all tiers of management staff. That requires some sort of like protocol of reporting, because this is, it's a different game change. It's not the time when you see an employee from 8 to 5 being productive. And therefore you sort of like have to decide what you're going to stress on as a business. Are you going to stress on person or the results, and how you're going to ensure that the results come? Preservation of customer service. This is one part that is hurting, or is going to hurt so many businesses. And customer service means that you need to be able to talk to your customers effectively and that every single time. And they need to be able to know how to reach out to you. They need to know how the problems are going to be solved. They need to know what are the timelines and things like that. Finally, risk management, mitigation, and damage control strategies. I think that's rather self-explanatory. And that's self-explanatory, and I will not dwell on that so much. So what are the specific planning items that you can do? I obviously wanted to be a teacher, and therefore I'm giving you homework to think about what are the specific things that you can do to ensure that you have continuity. But I'll just give you two examples, and I will say that you can, for example, you can identify critical staff and employees who are required to maintain business continuity and what is required to maintain them. And you can work around rostering them in shifts of 1 week or 2 days or whatever works out for you. And to remove the burden from HR, you can send others on leave so that they can utilize their leave days. Consider the possibility of impact of disruption of the supply chain, maybe. You have to think about that. And then and the third example, not to overburden you, would be to consider the impact of COVID-19 to your market and to your customers' requirements and even purchasing power. Because we have seen government going insofar as the government going insofar as giving economic stimulus such as reducing VAT, reducing corporate income tax, tax relief for local income earners, and so on and so forth. And this is because the principle is that the environment that has been left post-COVID is that it has been affected negatively economically. So you sort of like have to think about your customers' requirement in that kind of light. And I think out of time, I have a couple of more examples, but I will leave the session for questions.
Thank you so much, Peter KINYANJUI, for such an interesting conversation around risk management, especially in the aspect of securing business continuity. Yes, we have a few questions. I'll read the first question from Liz Amolo. I think she's tuning in from Homa Bay County. It's such so far away from Nairobi. But here's a question from her. She's asking, hi Peter, what are common risks we are likely adversely affect companies during this COVID-19 period, and what are the best ways to mitigate? Let's start from there.
Wonderful, and thank you for tuning in from Homa Bay. I would say that it's a tricky question because we may need to first of all draw a line between high and low. But in my view, what I would consider high is liquidity, cash liquidity for businesses. I would consider the issue of the legal and regulatory environment around COVID, because this government keeps on changing the regulations to try and push on people, and you sort of like have to think about that. Then you have to also consider the financial management implications. I think you also have to think about the strategic, long-term, middle-term, and long-term direction of your organization or business. Because in the short term, we're going to have a cash crunch, but in the middle term, we're going to have a recovery plan from the government. And so you sort of like going to have to identify and assess and see how your risk, this risk that you can identify can be dealt with in a way to ensure that your business is always profitable, and you have been able to guarantee your own business continuity.
All right, thank you so much for that. I read to you the next question, which is from Julian. What has COVID taught us about risk assessment and mitigation, given that as it is, the country, organization, businesses, and people were caught unawares?
Well, it has taught us one thing, that risk management is not, God, my connection is unstable. But it has taught us that risk management is not an effort in futility. And it has also taught us that those people who don't plan well in advance will be caught unawares and will be impacted higher than those people who foresaw the problems and devised strategies to deal with them. And this is not new, Purity, because I read the Bible and I remember the story of those people who attended the wedding at night and they were supposed to fill their lamps. The ones who didn't fill their lamps went off in the middle of the night. I think risk management goes far as far as risk is that it's like a black swan event and it affects everyone across board. But in your own business, in some ways, there is a way that the business is affected by the environment or is likely to be affected. And when you involve the stakeholders, if you're working in a team of 5, 10, 100, doesn't matter. Involve everyone. Everyone has value addition to what may affect the business in the middle and the short run. So I think my view is to say that challenges will continuously be there for business. But I think history is going to judge harshly those organizations or businesses that never factored in planning or never had a risk management culture intertwined with their operational culture. Purity, to you?
Yes. All right. Thank you so much. I'll read to you another question. We have one comment that's saying the lamp analogy is brilliant. I also thought so. I've never thought at it or looked at it from a risk perspective, but you brought it home with that. Another question from Liz. Hi, Peter. How can a company handle litigation risks from employees and even suppliers due to non-compliance of payment and employee contract termination during this COVID-19 period?
Litigation. So most of these clauses I would expect to be captured under force majeure. And basically, it's a concept of when you're unable to deliver services because of something that is so unavoidable. And I guess I would say, let's be very practical about these things. If you have employees, you gotta find a way. If it's gonna end up in litigation, I always say the best thing is avoid. If you can't avoid that, you can deal with the issue. But engage them. I saw another webinar here last time. It was about redundancies and choosing pay cuts and things like that. But you sort of like have to engage people. Like I said, risk management. One of the key things for it to work is that people gotta be talking to each other. But nonetheless, you have to be very awake to the legal environment. You have to be very awake to the processes that are required to be followed in the case of redundancies, in the case of invoking force majeure, in the case of supply management. And it's sort of like gotta have to refer to your contractual obligations in the contract. And the event that you feel like you may fall short of the expectations that you promised, don't shy away from it. It's out of your hand. Just communicate with it and manage it. Just manage it. Don't wait until the fire is at the ceiling. That's when you want to extinguish the fire. Just when you see it, pay attention to it.
All right. Thank you so much. Another question from Harrison. Hi, Peter. Since human behavior and cultural beliefs are key to success of a business or organization, how does the management ensure that all employees embrace each other, considering their diverse behaviors and cultures?
Purity, I have a problem with your audio. My face is on the screen, but I can't hear you.
Let me read it again. I hope now you can hear me clearly.
Lima Charlie, loud and clear.
All right, thank you. A question from Harrison. He's asking,
yes,
since human behavior and cultural beliefs are key in success of a business or organization, how does the management ensure that all employees embrace each other, considering their diverse behaviors and cultures?
I guess one of the first things that organizations need to do is align everyone to the vision and mission and purpose of the organization. And as a matter of fact, we are very, very different. But for as long as you wear the green, maybe to be Sparicom or whatever company that you wear, you sort of like have to leave all your values behind and align to that and push to one side. And that can be done in the lead measures. You remember, you can have orientation, when you're recruiting a new employee, you need to ensure that they are oriented to the standard operating procedures, to the code of ethics, and continuously you have to sort of like think outside the box in a way that inculcates and fosters a culture of togetherness through out-of-office activities such as team building. Oh, Kenyans love team building. And if you put it in Mombasa, they will go. All of them, they will go. So these ideas are available for people to use. And obviously, cost is always going to be an issue. So you sort of like have to think in a way that you accommodate the fact that resources are limited, but you still need to achieve the objective even with the limited resources. So I would say that you need to, there are small things that cumulatively will lead to all employees being synchronized in terms of mindset, in terms of objective. And purity, I think it is inescapable when we do these things religiously and diligently, that all employees will be aligned.
Sure, I totally agree with you. I will take one more question. I hope you're able to answer it within the next 1 minute. This question is from Lumiti. He's saying, hi, Peter, with people working from home, how can organization manage risks so that all employees are safe without working away from the office?
Lumbiti, that's a very difficult question, and I don't think I can answer it in 1 minute. But I think in a nutshell, first of all, you gotta be able to say what risk it is that needs to be managed, and not in a blanket way. How can organizations manage risk? Because are you talking about risk of cash flow? Are you talking about risk of being able to get goods from supply chain? Are you talking about the risks of your company not being able to have electricity? So you sort of like gonna have to come down to the actual risk. And remember, through the process that I took you above, it was basically to try and narrow down and say that there is no blanket approach. You have to be very systematic in your approach. You have to identify one risk, you have to analyze it, you have to prioritize it, and most importantly, you have to treat it. You have to give a treatment plan. So I think to inversely change the picture, I would say the reason why you are home or why I'm home or whatever is because organizations are trying to deal with the risk of cross-infections in the workplace. Think about that. Purity.
All right, thank you so much. I think that was a question to Lumiti. We come to the end of this particular presentation. I see one more question. I think we have 30 seconds remaining on this webinar from Jacinta. Can you please address it? How do you ensure that the risk of goods or equipment being stolen from site offices, especially now that the movement to site is minimized?
So there are multiple. So remember the risk treatment options there. So if you can't stop it, the best thing is to transfer it to insurance. You can transfer that risk to insurance, and insurance is not so expensive. But there are multiple measures that you can put in place. You can ensure that you have a working intruder alarm system. In the event there is an intrusion, it can trigger the alarm to a security service provider who is serving you. You can actually talk to me later after this. I can schedule you with the person who will do risk assessment and recommend. But in a nutshell, and for the benefit of all other people who are listening, I would say that if you can't protect it, transfer it. The second thing is ensure you have met the minimum baseline security requirements. That means in your office or your store or your business or whatever, you have to ensure that you have adhered to, you have burglar-proof windows, you have a good door, you have a good lock, and you have a good key management system, and you have, what else do you have? You have an intruder alarm system for the times that you're not at work, at night, at holiday, and you may have garden services. It's much cheaper if you are in a business complex, because then the cost of security goes outside. But if you're in a standalone office block, you're going to have to bear that cost.
All right. Thank you so much, Peter. I'll just read a few comments as we end up this webinar session. One comment from Jane. Thank you, Purity. Thanks, Peter. Great presentation. From Harrison, yep. Thank you for such an educative session. Stay safe and stay healthy. We had another one from Liz Amolo. Thank you, Purity. A very nice presentation and informative. I think we are getting very good feedback from this particular presentation. Thank you. Thanks to everyone who was able to tune in today. We hope you are able to tune in every other Wednesday at 11 a.m. We have very interesting topics we have planned for you all. Out of this, kindly feel free to contact us on the information on your screens right now. Drop us an email at info@accurex.co.ke or engage us with a telephone call or on WhatsApp. Also follow us on social media, just see what we are preparing for you in the coming week. For this presentation, if you've left us behind with your email address, we'll send it to you after this particular session. And also for the recording of this webinar, make sure you catch it up on our YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and search Accurex Consultants Limited, you'll see all the webinars that we've posted in the past, and even today's presentation will be there. Without much further ado, I want to say thanks again to Peter KINYANJUI. You've been very insightful. Even from the comments that we've received, very interesting comments. People have learned a lot from this webinar. Myself, I take lessons on risk mitigation, especially. I have to go to the party with a lamp full of oil. So that is my takeaway point from today's session. Other than that, I'll leave it here. I hope everyone is continuing to keep safe, maintaining distance, wearing masks when they're away from their homes, and also sanitizing. So until next time, thank you so much and God bless you. Bye.